has a question. Margot has a question.
You presented two models, one of the light and one of the darkness. One of the pillar of light and the possibility of awakening that is already happening, and one of the devastation, such as the one that happened in Fukushima. And at some point, when you talked about the evolution of things or the progression of things, you had one sentence and you said, there will be famine and we must prepare. And I cannot bring myself to believe that that's where we're going. So I would be very grateful if you could explain what you meant. Thank you.
The weather change, for example, so drastic. And of course, in the dark side, there's like Cargill and all this food, how to say, merchant. They start buying up so much food, and obviously they know shortage of food would come, so collecting all these things to give more damage to the people. So when it happens very quickly, you know, and so maybe 1/3 of the people in this coming 3-4 years may have a very difficulty. So I think it is important start preparing some, keeping some food or small garden or whatever. They can plant vegetable, something. Even in New York, they used to be planting like a self-flower or something. They just plant things like that. Self-sustained way of lifestyle, simplifying lifestyle, making as much as possible around your garden or something, borrowing. And from now, share to each other is very important. So the community work, the time will come very soon. And in Japan, we start preparing some community work. You know, we have so many mountains, trees, soccer, and so many land. Together with people, start working as a community, commune.
Margot, you know there's a reason why the federal authority in the United States had only recently introduced state and I believe federal legislation to outlaw your capacity to grow your own tomatoes. And the reason why they're introducing this kind of draconian bullshit, statutory legislation, nothing to do with law, the reason they're doing it is in order to prevent the engagement of people with their own backyard sustainable enterprise. If you're bringing about a global genocidal agenda, which the cabal, the historical cabal, have been very engaged in that game for a very long time, meaning to say, bringing about catastrophic failure of the social ecology and of the global economy, all of which is, broadly speaking, engineered to take place roundabout now. We're seeing it all over the world. But this is part of the reason why we're seeing those kind of draconian legislations being introduced. And the recently, as most of us probably know, the seed vaults that have been engineered and funded into play with taxpayers' money, but those enterprises officiated by hardline members of the cabal and good old-fashioned institutions like the Gates Foundation and what have you. So when you look at those seed vaults and what they've been doing, preserving seeds so that the world's food supply can be contained and controlled by these vested interests on the back end of catastrophic failure of the social ecology. Because one thing is for sure, and that is that when martial privilege is activated in any country, which could happen had that aeroplane, Princess, I didn't know about that, but that was for me fascinating to learn about the story you told about the aeroplane. But had that aeroplane, the Malaysian aircraft, actually been successfully crashed into that building where that summit was taking place, correct? Is this the same kind of activity like in 9/11? Had that occurred, that would almost certainly have sparked off a monstrous, a cataclysmic event in the socio-political domain. That immediately means that economical markets start to crash and burn. Okay, trading stops, all sorts of pandemonium and helter-skelter takes place. This is the Babylonian playing field. This is what these deviant mindsets have dreamt into play time and time again, going back to the Napoleonic Wars and actually way before. So this is part of the helter-skelter, we call it the privilege of the vested interests bringing about catastrophic failure. So I think that Princess was describing a probability timeline which has absolutely been engineered for the collapse of the social ecology and what actually does happen on the back of that kind of event. Go to the Argentine a few years ago when the Argentinian economy was tanked overnight, if you recall, by the central bank. Well, they didn't open the doors to the bank. And day one, a few people knocked on the doors of the bank going, is it a banking holiday? And day two, people were banging on the door. And I think by day three, they were kicking the doors in. There was no one there. And within 4 or 5 days, there was no blood in the hospitals, no bread on the shelves, no fresh milk coming in, port authorities locked down, all sorts of pandemonium. Well, actually, I believe that that was a litmus test, an early litmus test, being exacted in order for the cabal, let's say, to see what will happen at the planetary socio-ecological level when they do bring about this catastrophic failure, engineered. And what actually took place was the polar opposite, the diametric opposite of what was intended. Actually, after a few days, good old-fashioned factory workers in the Argentine kind of worked it out, that if they didn't go back to the factories, they wouldn't have bread on the table or milk. So they decided to go back to the factories and work, which they did. They took back the factories. Actually, in many instances, I understand that they claimed the factories from the owners of the factories. So actually, that diabolical timeline probability, which had been engineered by the Babylonian mindset, actually was the delivery system for the social reform. So that's, I think, the positive thing that I said. I mean, I've known Princess Nakamaru for many years, and I've known about her prognostications in the past. A great many of them have come true, and she's published over 80 books, really ringing the bell long before most people do. But I don't think that she was being apocalyptic. I think she was saying that is part of the mechanics of civilizational failure that we can expect to see in the urban environment.
Thank you. So we can either be on the side of love or fear, but love is much the greater of the two. And it's a question for HopeGirl. It's probably a pretty easy question to answer. You were talking about small-scale units, but supposing we're wanting to power something a bit bigger than a household, like a school or a hospital or something, is it easy to scale the QEG up?
So, well, actually, we're going to find that out with the co-development that's going on right now. So one concept is to have several QEGs, kind of like in a string, in order to create more power. But maybe we could make one giant QEG. I've had about 3 or 4 serious groups of people that are already working on this right now to figure out how to power entire villages, huge buildings, skyscrapers, hospitals, that sort of thing.
Thank you.
to the princess, you spoke of starships waiting for when. You spoke of starships for people who are more conscious if the world was to come to a dark place. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on that.
They say once they had such a experience in Turkey. Starship was then all these military people start shooting against the starship. Of course, there is a barrier of the starship, so nothing happened. So they were saying at the moment it's too dangerous for them to come down. So when the people are all awakening and welcoming the starship and all, then they can come soccer field or baseball field or inviting all the TV and also, just, this is not the time yet. But so many starships, even in Tokyo, Shibuya and all these areas, 30s and, so group of starships and Mexico, South America, so many of them, they've seen it and they're staying for a long time. So no longer people denies, starship and this and that. So we will see another several years time maybe changing the world a great deal. Our consciousness is going up and up and up now. So it's a wonderful thing. Okay? Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Your Highness, thank you very much for being here. Can I ask you about Fukushima? We know that in the very first month of the Fukushima disaster, they gave out more radiation than the whole of Chernobyl has for the total of its life, and every month since. We know that a lot of this radiation has been going into the sea and polluting the sea. Why is Japan not doing anything about this? Why is Japan not asking the rest of the world to help? Why is the Emperor being silent about this? This is destroying our planet.
Well, government is working very hard, and all this new technology. Mitsubishi Group just found out something very easily to erase. Japanese emperor's case, yes, as you say, if emperor starts saying stop all this atomic energy plant, that's the fine thing. But according to Japanese constitution, he cannot interfere of any of such matter, politically or socially. So maybe after we start changing the new constitution, maybe emperor's voice can be heard more. But after the Second World War, I think according American plan, Japanese could never stand up again as a, how to say, anyway, they just took off all the important spiritual side. They just took away all these things. So, and Communist Party, they created very strong. Always, I think the way shadow government plan is something to confront each other. To each country, they planned that way. And in Japan, the same way. Yeah? So, Communist Party and so forth. And according with that system, teaching system, in Japan, still, from my eye, it's not proper. So we need a completely new constitution to make Japanese spiritual side running properly, including imperial system. Okay.
Is it possible that there will be a revolution in Japan that will actually bring on this change? Because we are at a level of global extinction event with Fukushima. It is not a matter of waiting around for shadow government. We have to do something about it. What are we going to do about it?
People are awakening very much. For example, from political side to the spiritual side, I published 80 books. That could be done only in Japan, you see. Freedom of speech and all this information. I don't think I can publish those books in English or other country. So, information was full. So many people reading and awakenings. Revolution, no, not Japan. But I think in different way, politically, maybe 2016, Abe, Prime Minister, now retired, and completely the new Prime Minister who was under the control of David Rockefeller for 23 years. The person called Ozawa, he was so persecuted, but I think he will come back. He is the type, no atomic energy plant, against the TPP, against increasing the tax and all this. The politics for the people, he really advocates. And Rockefeller using media, even the police force, they really almost derived his political right. But I'm sure he's coming back on the 2016 and completely new government style would come.
Just answering to that, it's interesting how the Japanese were not allowed to remilitarize after the Second World War. They were forbidden from remilitarizing. And it was that prevention of them militarizing that allowed for the freedom of speech to occur on the streets of Tokyo and Hiroshima and elsewhere. So the Babylonian engineering of the disarming of the military might of Japan ended up becoming the delivery system for freedom of speech. And not just freedom of speech in this way, in the esoteric way, but also look at Masaru Emoto and how this man is at that vanguard of the discovery of consciousness and how consciousness engages at the holographic level with everything around us. It's just an interesting thing to observe in, again, the old Babylonian constructs, making plans, trying to engineer the outcome, but the outcome is very often the diametric opposite of what the enterprise intended.
Thank you. Lots of hands. Who has something they want to ask?
You mentioned about 70,000 troops there in Afghanistan. Can you explain
You asked the princess, Warren?
Well, you, Sacha, or Princess Sacha?
About that 17,000 troops being withdrawn from Afghanistan.
Said that he left in Afghanistan.
I'm sorry?
There's no money to bring them back.
That's what the princess has informed us, that there is no money to bring them back home. There's no money to effectively decommission the military machinery and hardware, which is on the ground there. But they can't very well leave it behind either, because that hardware will be picked up a dime a dozen by Russian interests or Chinese interests. So the US military machine is also effectively bankrupted in going into its own foreclosure. I think that's what the princess was speaking to.
And you touched on that, Gaddafi.
Warwick, I just can't hear you.
You also mentioned about Gaddafi in Libya. He was starting to say something.
Well, the Princess Nakamaru knew Muammar Gaddafi personally. What's the question?
Or, well, the implication was that he was a good guy.
The implication that Gaddafi was a good guy.
Yeah.
I didn't get to meet him. I've met his son, Saif Gaddafi. I engaged with the Libyan government 2 years before the regime was overthrown by an unlawful intervention by Anglo-Saxon imperial interests. But I don't know the man. I never met the man Gaddafi. Do you want to speak about that?
Gaddafi is the type, when they strongly attack him, he can, attack back. But in my case, I met him completely open-hearted. So he just acted like a little boy, talking to the mother, almost. So he would say, how can I have a good relation with Japan? So I said, well, Japan is a democratic country, and economically we are second in the world. If you send the ambassador, not the revolutionary ambassador, but some ambassador who understand the economic side, trade and all that, and someone who can speak Japanese language, and 3 days later, someone came to me and said, thank you very much, Princess. So I said, what for? He said, well, Gaddafi leader appointed me as ambassador. He spoke to me perfect Japanese. So I said, what happened? What will happen to the ambassador 1 week ago? He sent the revolutionary ambassador to Japan. And this new ambassador said, well, he will come back in 1 week and I will go to after that. And this new ambassador stayed in Japan almost 10 years up. And how he was killed that way, what I understand was he was trying to create the currency for the Arab people and African people. He prepared quite a bit of gold and some funds, some US dollars. NATO and the American soldier went into that took all this gold and money. They don't return to Libya. So I think these are considered to be almost like a robbery, invading other country and just took the things. Maybe history later will tell all these facts. I think that will happen. And look at Libya now, or Iraq, the same place. It was quite stable, but now nobody can just go into and work. They are fighting among themselves and just destroy the whole beautiful city and country. That is my impression after I've been all these places.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Thank you for your answers.
I just wanted to ask Miranda about dancing and ecstatic or shamanic dance and how it helps to release people from their emotional and psychic chains.
Well, funnily enough, Will, I wasn't actually here to speak about ecstatic dancing today. Will obviously knows I'm a dance facilitator. Will, you should come to one of my dances in Oxford and then you'll find out fully for yourself. They happen once a month and you're welcome to come.
Hi, it's a question for HopeGirl. Well, two actually. One of the things in the video, there was someone who was questioning about how long residence had been achieved for, and the answer came back, well, that's why it's been put out to the public to kind of develop, if you like. So the question is, how long how long has resonance been achieved for with the quag? That's the first part. I'll ask the second part in a moment.
Okay. I can tell you for our prototype, the first prototype, we have about 150 hours on that prototype in residence.
Great. And the second part was, I know you mentioned a number of websites where people can communicate and network and so on. For people who are wanting to actually gather other parties together to create the units, you know, to help build the quakes, what's the best avenue for that? You know, is there a particular website that people can log into to say, yeah, I'm here, let's get together and we'll build something?
Yes, well, we put together as much information as we could on the fixtheworldproject.org website. There's a whole section for the QEG and CSUs and some guidelines, which is all we have, is just guidelines, because you're doing all the work. You're finding the engineers, you're sourcing the parts, you're taking your creativity to the next level. We just threw in like a checklist of these are some of the things that you're going to want to do. Many people have taken that initiative already, and they're already creating groups because they've been waiting for this their whole lives. We've gotten that a lot. And that BDO website that I showed up there with forums, that seems to be the first place where many of these different groups are communicating with each other and helping each other find parts. And like I said, it's only been a couple of weeks, so hopefully in the next month there should be a lot more networking websites like that to help people to meet each other so that they can get organized.
Hi, I'd like to ask a general question really about what you view of kind of non-fiat currencies, so whether it's Brixton pound, the Lewis pound, Bitcoin, and trading, you know, in different currencies, possibly to the Sacha both, I guess.
I didn't, I'm so sorry, I'm half deaf from my years as a goth rocker. Can you just repeat?
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to find out panel people's opinions of non-fiat currencies, so whether it's the Brixton pound, the Lewis pound, Bitcoin, trading in other currencies.
Well, that's where we're at in currency convergence right now, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, whether we understand it or not. Because the fiat currency, which is predicated on the cannibal principle or the vampiric principle, is all but dead. Princess speaks about David Rockefeller having lost power base. Well, one assumes that that's very much the case, and has to be the case, just by observing the strap lines in newspapers, and even CNN headlines and BBC headlines, and God knows those toxic arteries are owned and controlled by the interests. But we're still seeing either which way the upheavals and the catastrophic failures. What emerges then as totem of exchange, currency of exchange, will not be coming from the Babylonian complex. It won't be given to us by a banker or by an economist. In fact, Margot and I had a heated breakfast yesterday. We were speaking about global economics, and I was explaining the view that I'm holding with our group of economists that we're developing as what we call a zero-point economy. And as some folks who know who our team are, we have half a dozen of the greatest economists on the planet informing the zero-point economy. Some of the guys who are the architects of the old order. And a zero-point economy is a blank canvas. It's a zero point. It's bringing global economics to where it belongs, in a coffin. We need to end economics altogether. We need to even stop speaking in terms of economics. We need to think in terms of social ecology. And we need to start to see social ecology as a lateral perspective. It's something that's broadcast around the surface of the earth at the fractal level, the scalar level, the torsion level, the energetic level. And we need to start to engage with one another, heart to heart, mind to mind, psionic center to psionic center, and begin to define and determine what do we determine as being the next totem of exchange, if anything at all. So pause that for a second. One of the groups that we're speaking to is a group of indigenous communities in, when I say we, I'm speaking on behalf of the New Earth Nation, which we'll speak more about after this, but is a group of indigenous communities throughout the Amazon, from pretty much Costa Rica all the way down to Peru. And we're talking about millions of hectares of land under the cooperative, collective containment of these indigenous groups. And what they're negotiating with our team is folding those land holdings into the New Earth Trust, which is an extraterritorial trust that we've set up to reclaim the global commons from enclosures, from corporations, from governments, from institutions, all of which are acting in abrogation and derogation of international law, Bill of Rights, Magna Carta, every form and jurisdiction of law you can shake a stick at. They're all in treason. So as interested parties, living men and women, the New Earth Nation is now working with its brain trust to create this new blank canvas and see what emerges. So with the indigenous Amazonian communities, they're saying, well, take these millions of hectares of land that we've got, we'll put them into the trust so you can monetize the oxygen, so to speak, of the trees and turn the oxygen into the collateral, the backing of a new currency that we, the indigenous people of the Amazon, wish to use. And actually, their chief spokesman, an extraordinary shaman, has said that he wants to 3D print the currency, and they've actually bought 3 printers. And they intend, we're working with them on this, how can we take millions of hectares of Amazon, which they own, and use that as the capitalization to roll out a totem backed up by oxygen. So there we've got a currency that's going to be backed up by oxygen, but that's relevant to those people. There are other complementary and alternative currencies in different parts of the world that will be backed up by different collateral. The New Earth Nation, our core currency that we are developing, is backed up by, what's that thing? Love, that's the thing. Fellowship, consciousness in action, integrity, pure truth, natural justice, all the right stuff. The stuff that has an infinite supply. Now, I tell you that when I give you a totem of exchange, it is not going to be a British pound sterling, it's not going to be a US dollar, it's not going to be a yen. Those are all toxic, highly toxic, accreted, third-dimensional totems, which are backed up by blood sacrifice, backed up by debt, generations into the future, backed up by misery, okay? And the indignity of a maligned human and planetary condition. So when we zero out that bullshit and regroup, and we agree to use a new totem of exchange, and I will then give you my totem, and it's backed up with my heart. It's backed up with my time. 1 hour of my time, my creative expression, my anything, as long as it's given truly, deeply, that is the backing to my currency. So this is the social experiment that we're beginning. And I'm not even waiting to see if it's going to succeed. I know it's going to succeed. We know it's going to succeed. Actually, it's already begun. I hope that answered it in a very long way. I apologize.
I've got 2 questions. One might be really stupid. It's to HopeGirl. You know what you're saying about the 150 hours of resonance? What happens after that? Do you have to, does it just break or... Sorry, I just didn't quite understand what that meant.
No problem. So the mechanical parts themselves were designed to be rather rugged so that the QEG should last as long as a really high quality appliance would last, like a washing machine. 25 years, something along those lines. And the only thing you'd have to do would be maintenance for some basic parts, like the belt or a couple of things that you would replace, kind of like doing an oil change on a car sort of maintenance. But the actual, once you turn it on, as long as it's in the same location, because you have to tune it to the frequency of the environment around it, once you turn it on, it will run continuously. And if you ever need to move it, say you move your home and you want to take your generator with you, I hope you would have to then retune it, which is just a process of putting capacitors one after the other to get it to the right frequency so that it can be in resonance. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. And my other question, if I'm allowed, if you have a really traumatic birth, is there anything that you can do to repair that?
Yes, have an ecstatic life.
What was that?
Have an ecstatic life.
Yeah, that's think about that. Whoever said that, that was
Margot Anand, obviously.
Ah, Margot. Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, the birth into being method is a kind of multi-sensory approach to dealing with birth trauma. Developed by Elena over many, many years of working in this field. So it's really cutting edge, and it weaves together a lot of different things. And the whole point of it is to create a number of experiences that live in your nervous system as truth, to actually repair, to create new memories, and to, sometimes instead of just going back to the old traumatic stuff and reliving that, I mean, sometimes, it's valuable to go there, but what we want to do is we want to find the, really practice going from the old imprint, the old traumatized, shut down way of being, the old me that would, feel scared or whatever, or would hide, into a situation where you step beyond your comfort zone. And there are so many ways of doing this. And the importance of it is really getting it viscerally into your body, into the cellular body, and to repeat that experience time and time again, so when you're at that edge of kind of closing and taking that deep breath to really sink in and feel whatever emotion it is that is coming up, whatever anxiety, tension, pain, discomfort, breathing through it, really being present to it. I mean, it's a form of radical reparenting. This work ultimately is about radical reparenting, because many people go around traumatized and completely, put their inner child onto everyone else. Please take care of me, or just live off the state and need benefits and things like that. But when you truly step into your power and you're taking responsibility, then it's that conscious effort every day to really feel, as Elena said, to be the nervous system of planet Earth, to really feel, to really take care. That's really it. And come and do a workshop, and then we get to play with all of these methods, and you get that multi-sensory approach in the body, in the mind, in the heart. It just goes in really deep. Yeah. Thank you.
We have about, Michael Rice totally has something to say about this. We have about 10 more minutes, and if you have a question, I'd just like to see hands while Michael Rice responds.
If I may be brief on that question, there's a program I've developed with my partner in the Czech Republic. We call it the Matrix of Rebirth. It's a 4-day program, and we use geometry, about 200 kilos of beautiful crystals that we create on the ground, which is a fractal map of conception, early cell division, and then the 9 months of in utero, and then the birth process itself. So we use the geometry as a energetic matrix that people physically walk through one by one, being supported by everybody else in the seminar. And as they go through it, their entire bioenergy field resonates with the pure principle of the ideal process of birth and development. So we go through the stages of the child's development in utero and create geometry that resonates with that. And people have individual experiences, of course. Screaming, there's a lot of rebirth energy, a lot of primal scream coming back into alignment. Some people walk in silence and they just come out the far side deeply in peace. Others have a relatively easy movement through with the birth process itself as they're coming through the birth canal. Those that have had cesarean birth themselves, they haven't had the opportunity to have their skull, their brain, to push through with the waves of contraction that are in waving with the waves of the waves. You know, if we don't have that birth, we don't remember. I mean, it's called cesarean, I believe. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Julius Caesar, but he waged war on the earth. He waged war on the Druids, on the mother feminine energy, because he had an inability to embed in the earth, because he didn't have that pressure wave of memory, that memory download of who he is as a human on this beautiful planet. So many people coming through this geometry get an opportunity to rebirth themselves consciously, not through therapy or pushing philosophy, just through the very act that the geometry itself creates a field. It's visible as a two-dimensional map, but of course it's timeless, it's past, present and future, it's 3, 4, 5 dimensions. And as you walk through it, you get a tune-up. And anything that no longer serves in your field, that is no longer comfortable to you because of this memory injection, is released. And it's done so in a very supportive, energized environment. Nice music, beautiful space, sacred architecture. And so I just wanted to mention that, and all of what Miranda said as well, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, my question is for Princess Nakamaru. Thank you so much for your talk. It was really touching and really enlightening. You mentioned about the famine, and that's the only thing that concerned me really. You also mentioned that they live off fear. I love your expression. They eat fear, and that to me is something that would instill fear in people if they think that there's going to be 1/3, I think you said, of people who in the next few years who really suffer and stocking up, etc. And I think absolutely this is their plan, and absolutely this is the time that they are engineering this to happen. But we are also rising in our consciousness, and we are creators, and we can create whatever we want to, and we can create that there's abundance, and we can completely ignore what they're doing and focus on what we want, not what they want. And they want us to be in fair, and they want us to know that they're planning our famines and death, by starvation. And I'm here really just to offer sort of good news, really, that there is something that we're working on at the moment. I'm just going to actually stand up. It's called the Reset. We are resetting our country. We have our rights enshrined in common law. They have been ignored. The cabal has, in the last few centuries in particular, they've been completely eroding them and bringing out statutes that contradict our natural rights, our common law rights. And there's a system in this country and in every country where we can go back. It's not about creating something that's cyborg or scientific or something that's new out there. We have these. It's about going back to nature. It's about going back to Mother Nature. It's going back to what is natural. And we have these enshrined in our laws. All we need to do is reclaim them. Just like we are going to reclaim our earth, we are going to reclaim our power, and it's already there. In this country, we have parishes. And within that system, it's a local grassroots level where we can call for a referendum. Nobody knows about this. We think that we can only vote our MPs in and they can pass laws. Unfortunately, those MPs are controlled obviously by these corporations. But we have the structure in this country to go to our parish and call for a referendum asking for whatever we're unhappy with. And the main thing that we're unhappy with at the moment is funding these wars, funding the bankers, funding the corporations who don't pay, most of them, a penny towards our taxes. And we're doing this, and the reset is doing this. Next year is the 800-year anniversary. My vision is, and this is what I'm focused on, that June 2015 is the anniversary, the 800th anniversary of Magna Carta. And we are going to be celebrating. We would have voted in a referendum asking for the abolition, demanding the abolition of our taxes. Because taxes, I don't know if you know, but taxes were only ever a wartime measure. They were brought in as an emergency measure if we were being attacked. And we are not being attacked. We are attacking. We're invading. We're part of NATO. And we're part of all these genocidal wars that are going on where we're going to other countries, invading other countries for their resources. We're not the ones that are under attack. So we should not, do not have to pay these taxes. There's a facility available where we can vote for the abolition of these taxes. There's a system that's out there at the moment called TEAL, which is Total Economic Activity Levy. It's only a 1% tax, and that 1% tax is charged automatically. So these corporations that we have, like Amazon, there's all these big massive corporations who aren't paying a penny in tax because they've got these loopholes which they voted from our lawyers. They will automatically have to start paying taxes. And because they're billion-pound corporations, the money that we're earning last year was the Treasury collected under 500 billion. And if we did this, if we had TEAL last year, we would have collected 1.5 trillion pounds. So we will triple our income, and then imagine what we can do with that money. We will not have famine, we will have abundance. And we're going to start in the UK, and the UK is actually the heart. Apparently, I'm not very knowledgeable about this, but the ley lines concur that they are the heart of the world, and this will be it's obviously started in Iceland already, but we are really going to be the inspiration for this to take off in the rest of the world. So my vision is abundance, and not famine, it's love, not fear. Thank you.
Was that a question to
We have like 0 time left, and lots of questions. If you have a question, raise your hand just so I can see. 1, you've already asked a question, but thank you. 1, 2, and can we keep our answers brief? Yeah, and I'd love to hear from you.
Hello, welcome, lovelies, and I want to welcome Princess Gajay-Mashed. I wanted to say that I'm being a practitioner regarding the origin of spirit, the sun origin of spreading the light of Creator God. Now, in regard to Princess, thank you so much to be present and to share what you have shared, because this is something we have been, our organisation, spreading Creator God's light and teachings in regard to the divine plan to prepare mankind for these changes that's happening. In regard to famine and things like that, but we have to remember that mankind has disconnected from Creator a very long time. And by doing so, we've accumulated much toxic impurities and wrapped our soul for a very, very long time to open to these dark things, whether you call them dark ones, cabal, we call them evil deities, who were the ones that was attached to and went against Creator. So these things need to happen, and it is love. Love and light is going to dispel. Darkness you cannot get rid of, you only can transcend. So the more love we have in our hearts and spread in Creator God's love, and we purify our soul and spiritual aspect, so it will filter downstream, astrally, mentally, emotionally, and physically, so we can collectively join as one. And I think this is the way forward for true freedom for mankind, and I wanted to be grateful for all those unseemly serving in the divine plane and the higher dimensions in 5, 6, 7, 8 and above to support this ascension. So it's not for us to fight darkness with darkness, but it's love and light that will truly free us, and pray and apologize on behalf of all our ancestors in previous lifetimes that has created these, and recreated all our many incarnations and reincarnations. So I wanted to really say thank you and honourably to have Princess here, and I just wanted to email and Skype.
Thank you. One more question.
This is a question for Sacha Stone. During your interview with Montague, he was mentioning about the fact that they would like to use promissory notes in order to raise the national or also individual debt. Oh, okay. Is this better? Okay. Should I say it again? Okay, so during the interview with Michael Tanger, he was saying about how they want to use promissory notes in order to raise the national or individual debt of people. So can you please explain a little bit about how this works?
Oh, you're asking about how Michael Tellinger is planning to discharge the national debt of South Africa?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful story, and I'm so grateful you raised this, because I noticed when that was being broadcast that I don't think many people heard what he was saying. But that is actually the line in the sand. He's planning in the next 2 to 3 weeks to pay off the national debt and discharge it by printing a promissory on the side of a cow and taking that cow to the Reserve Bank of South Africa and handing that cow over to the chairman of the bank or to the porter. Because once he's done that action, that is legal tender. I can, as a living man, assume the debt of the nation here in England and discharge that debt with a promissory. If I can get 51% of people to agree that I'm going to take on their debt, and I think they'd probably be happy to agree. So, if you want to deconstruct the Babylonian bullshit that has eventuated into our global economy, then you have to understand how math works, banking language works. There's a reason why banks and bankers speak banking language. It's designed as a hermetical seal between human beings and bankers. And this is the problem. So the promissory system is where we simply reclaim the totem and we write, I promise to pay you. And you hand that piece of paper to you. It's a promise. That's all it is. All we can offer in this veil of tears is a promise. And Michael has proven this on 3 occasions, as you probably know, having fought the Central Bank of South Africa, okay, on 3 occasions, lost the court case, surprise, surprise. That would be because the central bankers own and control the legislature and the judiciary, which is all the world over. It's what the princess was also speaking about the government system and how it's been construed into play. So Michael on 3 occasions has lost the cases with the central banks. He's walked out of the courtroom carrying the court costs. That's been a judgment. You, Michael Tellinger, will pay $500,000 in legal costs for bringing this case against the central bank, which you lost. And what did he do? He went and sat down in a cafe outside the courtroom and wrote the promissory on a napkin and took it back to the clerk and paid the court costs. And they had to accept it, and they bloody well knew it. So that's what's uniquely exciting about what Michael has proven now on 3 occasions in South Africa. And it's not to say that the same thing is going to happen in Burkina Faso or Ecuador or Central African Republic. They'll probably pull a gun out and shoot you dead. But the point is that under pure law and under true natural justice, which also governs banking procedures and protocols and regulatory frameworks, you can actually do that. Michael's proven it in South Africa.
Beautiful, thank you. We really do have to finish. I hear that you guys have so many more questions, but we'll be here speaking all night long, but I'd love to hear from those we haven't heard from.
I wonder if I could put forward a motion and ask you to vote on the motion. And the motion is Sacha Stone take over the national debt of England and Wales.
I got really bad news for you. I was born in Rhodesia, pal. I don't have a birth certificate in this country. Sorry.
Okay, I'll take it over.
Big round of applause for our speakers.